We're obviously in City Hall upstairs. Everyone present, are we live and ready to go?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Madden. All council members are present and in person. Our city administrator, Mr. Madden, is here, as well as a whole bunch of department heads and we even have press representative for this from Post and Courier. And if you expect me to remember your name, that's not going to happen. But I appreciate you being here.
His name is Connor.
Connor, I love it. Not your fault, that's me. I'll remember your face though, I promise.
With one
Even with a
N.
mask.
Connor with one N.
Connor with one N. Good job. Well, thank you for being here.
It's okay, Connor. The rest of us know you and like you.
That's all right.
It wasn't personal, I just mentioned it, to be fair. Thank you all for being here. And I think before we get started, I wanted to tell Ms. King how much I appreciate, as well as the rest of council. I appreciate you guys barreling on in my absence from the last meeting. I understand there was a lot of great discussion. Ms. King has a tremendous amount of experience, so I had zero issue and zero qualms with knowing that you guys would be able to barrel on without me. And I just appreciate y'all going ahead and talking about this year's budget. And I think the only other comment I'd like to say before we get started is kind of my mentality on budgets and budgeting and where we're sitting with these every single year is this is our budget. This is our baby. We ask staff to prepare this for us, but it is our responsibility. So as we start the discussions, as we've talked about it, up until this point, you know, we're asking staff for answers to our questions, but ultimately we are the ones who are going to make the decision because we're the ones who have to answer for it. So as we look through little line items, if we have questions, if we want big ticket things addressed, then that onus is on us. So I think this is one of our most important duties that we do to serve our citizens, and certainly don't take it lightly. But one of the things this council has the advantage of is, I think, a tremendous staff to bring forward what they have to this point. It is, I know cities even now in great economies struggle to do this very thing. And we, while I look at this and I understand, and I know this is a tight budget, there are other cities who are going to struggle even more so than we have. And that is much due to the department heads and Mr. Madden, as well as Ms. Abercrombie, and her ability to say no before it ever comes to us. So certainly before we start, I want to thank all the department heads for the work put up into this point. We certainly appreciate it. And the discussion here, I hope, does never turn into a personal thing where, as we discuss little details, they don't turn into a critique of a department, but more that this is now our responsibility to handle. So thank you for everybody. Thank you for everything. Kind of the agenda for me today was, according to Ms. King, you guys handled the CIP or the capital projects a lot and in a lot of detail. So I didn't want to touch on that much more. But there were some questions in the last budget meeting that, you know, I know one was with stormwater and there were a couple of others. I did want to give Mr. Madden kind of an opportunity to recap the last meeting and kind of give an early entrance into where he's at and what he got out of the last meeting. So Mr. Madden, if you take the floor and we'll go from there.
Mr. Members of the council, the two takeaways that were noted following the conclusion of the previous budget workshop. First was capital improvement and recreation. There were a couple questions about the cost of the capital improvement items for the recreation department. Recreation Director Bart Cumberlander has reaffirmed those costs. They all are accurate. The sliding glass doors at the sports center, that quote was reaffirmed at right at 7,100. So we think the 10,000 that's allocated there in the CIP will cover that. Also, the paving of or repaving of the Springfield parking lot was budgeted as was for around 91,000. The other quote was closer to 200,000. So we think 125 is a good starting point. When it's bid out next year, it may be higher or it may come in lower. And so that number is there. Those are two major ones. We also looked at the accordion pieces for the senior center, the room separators. The quote we had was at 26,000.
Correct, it went up. It went up price because it was in the budget. In 18, you took it out, it went up about 1,000, 1,200.
1,200. So that one's under by about $1,200. Council can make an adjustment there. Not in the overall capital budget, but just for that item. You could increase that item by 1,200 and decrease the sliding doors for the sports center by the same amount. Both items would be properly funded for the capital. That's for capital for recreation. The other item was the stormwater. We kind of got into a discussion at the end of the meeting about how that would be addressed. What I noted following that was that staff will put together a report of what stormwater ditches have been cleaned out, the amount that has been taken out, and the location of those at the end of the fiscal year, and that in fiscal year 22, we will take what we're doing in practice and put that into an actual document that council can see that explains what's being cleaned, how the stormwater drainage ditch cleanout program is working now, and look for ways to fund that more in upcoming budgets. So those are the two things that I had noted and staff's responses to those. But if there's more, we said that we're all here to answer any questions you have about the budget, including those two items.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Madden. Kind of at this point, to Mr. Madden's point, any questions to the two items he addressed there?
I guess mine was the stormwater, and I'll work through Councilman Crayley and Mr. Madden next year. I just want to be sure we didn't increase the funding for the street department, but I think he understands that it's a priority. And if there's spare time for the street department, they ought to be cleaning ditches or jetting culverts and maybe not having to assist other departments as much. It's a priority. And I think it needs to be a priority. The communication will help. We'll feed that back with the stormwater group that we had some citizens and some business owners that gave up their time and gave us some items. And of course the ditches was one of their first things they all jumped on. And then some longer range things you'll hear about over the next few years as far as, porous paving and things like that are longer term kind of projects as they prove out kind of thing. But it's just a priority for us.
And with
Should
the,
be.
with the new truck, the jetback, what we were doing, the maintenance on it should take a heck of a lot less time, correct? So we should be able to do more with that.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Crayley. Yeah, I think, as we've looked through this budget and dealing with the last year's budget, one of the main points as I think about this one is how much of a benefit the inmates were to the city that I don't know that we ever really realized how much they taxed or they didn't tax our department. And coming into a year where we have to look and say we didn't have that became a real challenge for Public Works. And I think moving forward, as we start making real decisions on how we want to handle the inmates long term, that's a significant question for the city, because if we're moving away from that, then you're paying a guy or a person to do those jobs, and that person's going to be a lot more expensive than that inmate. So I think as we move forward, one of the it was a challenge last year, obviously, but one of the opportunities I see out of that is how the city can adapt moving forward. So, but that was just in Public Works. Any other questions to those items?
I would hope we would keep a good relationship and let them know we want the inmates back as soon as we can get them back. We won't be the only city bidding for them since other cities have decided to take their sanitation back. So want to be sure we're head on the list that says, hey, we're still going to feed you from Dino's. If you'll come over here and ride our sanitation trucks. And
Or
pick
hip
up
burn,
our-
and other options too.
We've seen the difference in labor costs. And inmates are pretty significant for us and, you know, those that control the squeaky wheel revenue streams. Has to be on the expense side too, so.
I think, and that's my major point is we gotta, as a city, we gotta decide, is that the relationship we want to continue long-term, or do we want to step back and do that with our manpower? But long-term, we better figure that out.
Get them, we can
We
get
got
them.
2 new trash trucks coming on board, so that will cut down on personnel on the back.
Several acres.
That's right.
If we can get the inmates, they can be taught to run a weed eater too. So,
Exactly. And clean out ditches.
yeah, absolutely. So,
And over the years, we have hired some of the inmates that work for us on that program. They've been real good employees for the city.
If I could, Mr. Chair, take the opportunity to thank Mr. Fleeman with, I know we all realize this, but I don't think necessarily our residents do, but you had employees that you had to pull from different areas to get on the back of a trash truck, and that's not what they signed up to do. So please let them know again that that was greatly appreciated. And
We're still doing it.
I know you're still doing it. I said, hopefully we're about to turn the corner. We're not there yet. We got to get 2 more trucks in here and help you get some of those guys off the back.
I started to say when your director's having to use his CDL skills to drive a truck.
I know.
You act like we're punishing him. He's getting out from behind an office and
It's
driving a big
cross-training.
truck, right? It's like-
There's your team player right there.
That's a fringe benefit.
It's called cross training.
Never say Matthew won't do what has to be
That's
done
true.
to get the
You
job
don't
done.
think he was driving the junkie truck, do you?
No, one with air conditioning, one he had.
I drive the oldest, dragged out one.
We do appreciate
But
it.
thank you for your comments, Ms. King. That is certainly seconded by everybody sitting at this table. Okay, so CIP was covered pretty well. The only one I had a question in there about was the city police cars. I had actually thought that I would like to see that expanded out over more years. Ms. King said there was not a lot of discussion, so I'm glad to hear there's a lot of agreement there. So I won't even spend any time on that, but I think the next and best way to handle it is if you guys have specific things we'd like to go look at, now would be the time, I think.
Let me ask you a question, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Brandon, I know we talked about it and it's been taken out, and I don't know for what reason. We talked about it one time about a picnic shelter over at Pine Forest, Oak Forest. And I noticed it was been deleted. I don't know, and I know some of the council members are in favor, some are not in favor, but it is one of our city parks, and we just got to doing the playground equipment over there and redoing the basketball court and things of this nature. So is that still in the works, or are we gonna forget about it altogether, or what's the status on it?
No, it was, when we ranked our projects for CIP, looking at the available funding for this fiscal year, it would be a cost that from what was recommended couldn't be absorbed, but it's included in future, to be looked at in future CIP budgets. So right now, the funding really isn't there. This is this is an opportunity to bring up, when we're talking about funding, especially the recreation funds that we received from Greenville County. You know, that agreement, that 5-year agreement ends June 30th. And there has been some talk that it will not be renewed. So we will not be receiving those funds in the future that we get from Greenville County. We think we'll get it for fiscal year 2022, but there's a level of uncertainty for getting it past that. So that also weighed in the decision to look at that in upcoming fiscal years and not funding it this year.
Did they give a reason? Because we're serving county as well as city residents.
No, I think right now they're looking at it strictly from the fact that what they're saying, it was a 5-year agreement. That agreements don't last forever. And that
We're government.
that they're looking at not providing that funding to all cities, not just City of Mauldin. So that's on the horizon, not right now.
Take your
As
time.
far as fiscal year 2022, what council is vetting now, those revenues will be there, but maybe not after that. So that's something that was taken into consideration.
And how about, we would get all the information, bring it to the Recreation Committee as to why. I mean, I know you said the contract runs out at 5 years, but we fought long and hard over this thing for years, and we've been coming up on the short end of the stick for a number of years with Greenville County Recreation. We're not getting our fair share for what we're providing, so I hate to see the citizens of Mauldin have to suffer for something that somebody that doesn't live here is involved in.
I would remember correctly, they actually went to the state legislature and got something passed that's how they took the recreation money. And it took years of 6 different communities working hard to even get our share back. So it just is a
It was
conversation.
the dissolution of the Greenville County Recreation District and rolling it as a department under Greenville County. And like you said, it was a discussion among all of the municipalities in Greenville County who provide recreation services, because not everybody did. But those 6 going to the county and saying, we want that. So yeah, you're right there.
Yeah, but
We
just
fought
need
for a
to
long
have
time to pull out of it because we wasn't getting representation and getting money to support everything we had going on.
Yeah, and the way I understand it, it's pursuant to an agreement with the county and the different municipalities. And there's a termination date on that agreement.
But I think that was done, a lot of it was done at the state level without input from the local level too. The decision that was made.
But I'll get as much information as I can, but I think fiscal year 2022,
Yeah.
those revenues are there. It's just in the future, it's not as certain as it was,
we just need to have that discussion before we're in budget for 2023. If it's, because nothing happens quickly. Cities are slow, it gets even slower as the power of the scale here.
We need the money just as well as they do.
We're proud of our recreation and where we've come in all the years, and that was going to be a big hit till we got the agreement, and that took 6 communities, I think. The mayor down there agreed. Was key to doing that.
And we still suffered in this last agreement on what we were getting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. All right, starting at the beginning. Without going through and calling each department, I think this would, like I said, it would probably be appropriate to just put the feelers out there. If you have a specific budget you'd like to take a look at, let's go to it and go from there. Actually, I'll run through them real quick now, be what we do. Excuse me, by the way. That was lemonade down the wall. Shoot. Which was undated lemonade, so I'm not entirely sure it's actually fresh. Very well
last
may be.
meeting.
It may be. Policy change, we should date our drinks in the refrigerator.
What page we starting?
Now, are we going to start with council administration or skip to?
Are there any questions or comments with council administration? I had none.
Which page are you on, Michael?
Well, I'm trying to get us fast forward to page 68, but.
That's where I was going, as
Okay.
slow as possible. All right, so we are starting at This is my page 68, but
Judicial would be 68. Is that good?
that's perfect.
It's 82 for anybody who's using the electronic version.
We can't have a job
Michael,
behind.
it's page
I
82.
know, that's right. I'm at 74 right now. Going as fast as we can.
The paper works a lot faster.
And then we'll jump to 86 if the chair allows.
All right, shoot, what do we have for a question?
Judicial's pretty straightforward.
Ms. King's trying to get her department. Jumped over.
Trying to get to recreation.
No questions in judicial? No questions in police? I'm at fire now. Any questions in fire?
I couldn't even flip the pages through police fast enough. That was. Chief's back there going. "Shoo."
The sweat moves from.
Just to comment on the fire, I'll have to quit kidding the chief about the shiny red trucks because the new ones aren't red.
You want to talk, right?
I thought they were gray, silver,
They'll be red and gray.
red and gray.
Where the white is on ours now, they'll be gray.
Okay.
What's the reasoning behind? What's the
Gray's a
reasoning
good
behind that?
color. I like gray.
But
No reason, just.
wanted to be something different than nobody else around here's got.
Found out of high school.
So also
A
be asking-
25-year upgrade, right?
Yep.
I do want to say one thing. I absolutely love the flags on the back. Love it.
We've had a lot of compliments from that.
That just, every time I see it, it just makes me smile.
Absolutely.
And that's the staff. They done that, so
Yeah.
I'll pass that on to them. Yeah.
Okay, I'm at fire now, business and development services.
Fairly flat.
I don't get paper cuts. It just takes me longer.
Well, if I had tabs, that wouldn't have happened.
We're trying to economize. Should be under the bus, Brenda. You turn in your old books and still don't use them.
All right, no questions.
You get down.
No, they didn't.
I need mine. I need to look back at them, maybe.
I got all mine. in
I
my
do
office.
too. They're all on my shelf.
I turn mine in if that helps. Otherwise, I don't have storage space. We talked about that.
I can turn in my last 7 years if that helps you out.
She just wants the tab.
She just wants tabs.
Next department I have is Public Works Sewer Division.
Somebody said, "Uh-oh." As Larry used to say, just happy flushing.
That's right. He lives on.
Less we hear about him, the better.
Oh,
Sewer. Public Works, we've got
I
Street
didn't catch
Division.
that.
had my stay there, so I'm good.
Sanitation Division, Public Works. Public Works Administration. Public Works Fleet Maintenance. Public Works Parks and Grounds Maintenance.
Right now, you should take a, if you haven't recently, take a walk around our parks and our grounds right now and look. And they look amazing, so.
Well, the
Kudos.
baseball fields are being well used and
Look
you
good.
know, I appreciate a well-maintained baseball field.
New dirt.
New dirt.
Grass fertilized, well maintained.
You got clean dirt this time?
Yes, we did.
Paid extra for it. All right, next one is recreation. Any question, comments, concerns, specifics?
Only question it's not really a question. We went through a tough year last year for every department in here. But recreation, very innovative and continuing their programs and things like that. So I think Willie and Andre did a heck of a job. Oh, and Bart.
You could have just left it at Willie and I.
Bart did a job.
The ones that are working, the rest of them are gonna be part of, I haven't thrown him in the bus there kind of thing. So, but I mean, look at the numbers and that and the kids and things, and this is for the future.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at what comes out of recreation this year, Mauldin High School basketball, 5A championship game, look a little short.
I'll say runner-up.
Runner-up, but that's the feeding grounds kind of things. So kudos to you and your staff for being innovative in a tough year of trying to get people to be able to turn out and still continue that. And as I said, the rest of the department, each one of us could take a department and say what y'all went through from fire and police and all that and what they had to do and still make it permits, still think. Matt in PW, I mean, good gracious, the pressure he was under kind of thing. So, and all those we went through. But back to recreation. Thanks.
But Matt, he got to drive the truck this year, though.
Yeah, he did get some experience there. Got some hours behind the wheel.
Well, it's funny you mentioned recreation because that's such a difficult department to pin down its value to your city. You know, it's hard to put a monetary value on it, but when you do exactly what you just said, you look at how many of those Mauldin guys who were playing on a runner-up team came right through that system. That's such a neat thing to see, and that's that identity that Mauldin so desperately needs, and that value in being from Mauldin. So
It actually goes back to the economic development workshop discussing quality of place.
Exactly.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you, Bart.
And Judge Martin's not in here. We need to find out what she said.
She was
her
here
son,
earlier.
because he went
That's right.
from recreation, he went from here to 6, 7.
That's
and
right.
by the time he got to the high school kind of thing. So
Mayor,
whatever. she
apparently you
did-
can ask her because she's virtual.
Oh, is she? Okay. Anyway, she'll hear about it anyway.
But, and then for recreation to step up the game and say, hey, you know, if you want to play fall sports, we're going to play fall sports, when a lot of cities didn't do that. So I think kids were ready to get out and parents were ready for kids to get out. So, yeah, so it's all good.
No, absolutely.
Again, thanks Bart and Willie, not Bart, thanks Andre and Willie. He knows how valuable those guys are.
The best leaders empower their
I'll
employees.
buy you a
right?
hot dog,
That's my
Bart.
favorite saying. Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah, we're getting back to where we used to be years ago when Mauldin was the feeder for the high school.
Mhm.
We got away from that for a while, for what reason, we don't know, but you know, we brought the kids up through our sports and recreation programs, and then they just went right on into high school. It's like they hadn't missed a lick. Cool deal. Thank you.
Very good. You know, there's also the saying, as a leader, you never know when you're being followed or chased. Or was that? Yeah, followed or chased.
Follow their chase.
Sports Center.
So this is, I guess this is kind of budget related. I don't know if Brandon or Bart wants to take this on, but so I understand that one of our employees was shifted from one position to take Mary Jane's old job. So that leads me to ask where we are with that opening for the marketing person. And I looked online, Mark, I didn't see that posted, so.
It's actively, they're recruiting, for that position.
Okay, and I know, again, not to use COVID as an excuse, but I know we're just now getting to the point to where if we had a person that they would be able to go out into the community and do what we want them to do. But
Yeah,
I
they
just think
recruit-
it's important to note that councils of past and hopefully councils of current just have harped and harped on how important it was to try to get membership and have that person to go out into the community and try to recruit. So I would like to see that be a high priority if everyone else agrees.
It was a high priority for council to hire that coordinator to try to sell it.
Yeah,
And I think it needs to be, yeah, and I trust that Bart and his staff will do a good job with recruiting and Mark is well involved with that. But I think we need to really find the appropriate person and that person understands what their duties are going to be. Because to me, it sounds like a fun job and almost an easy job, because if you believe in the product, then you can get out and sell that product. And I just think there's some basic things that, as I've said for 4 years now, that can be done to help with our numbers.
And I
But
don't know when this transpired, but I was not aware of it till the mayor told me, and I know it's not my responsibility or anybody on council want to employ other than department head or
That's right.
administrator. But just from information purposes, one was moved from a job they've hired for to another position if somebody retired. So I didn't know anything about it.
So
So,
we'll make sure moving forward when somebody.
I mean, I don't need to know everything, but when this was a coordinator that was hired specifically for that purpose to sell the programs over there, and then they were moved to another position, you know.
and I don't, yeah.
And I don't
Again,
think-
we don't get involved at that level, but I personally don't have an issue with that. I
No.
believe in putting folks in the positions where they're going to shine and do the best job that they can, whether it's in street and sewer or recreation or at the sports center. So I
But
think,
that goes back to, in this case, Bart is the department, and Mr. Madden is to making that decision. It wasn't mine or recreation committees or councils doings.
Yeah, and when council approved the marketing plan, it took the process of recruiting to more of a full team effort. So taking it off of just one person to do it, it's a full staff that's out there recruiting and trying to drive people to sign up for memberships. You know, and I'm putting this in the admin report. You know, we're averaging 68 people since January 1st, and we've clapped new members, and we're tracking that information moving forward. And the position that you mentioned, Ms. King, when Mary Jane retired, that position was available, and you had a staff person apply for that position, that fit that position, that brings something to the table, to the recreation department, that makes the recommendation, what makes the sports center work well. So what we're doing now is we're actually recruiting a coordinator so they know up front, you're gonna be out speaking to people, going out to businesses, recruiting membership there. Now, the fitness gym industry is a difficult industry. There's a lot of competition. We just had a new gym open. But notwithstanding that, you know, we need to do a better job of recruiting folks to be members of our sports center. Even though it's not an enterprise, council has the expectation, as I understand it, that revenue will be generated from the sports center to offset the general fund revenues that are used to support it. And so we're gonna find somebody to do it. We've been growing over the past 3 months. We wanna keep that energy going, and continue to grow the sports center. But as soon as they find the right person, that person will be hired.
In my opinion, we got a golden opportunity right now with all the growth in our city and outside our city to sell the facilities we have over there, which will draw more and more people into our other activities at the culture center, our parks, recreation programs, and all this other stuff.
and a lot of times it's just making people aware of what's there, and it's not just for the residents of Mauldin. If you want to join, you can join. So,
I guess most of you know my heart is in the sports center. I'm there a lot during the week. Used to be there early in the morning with some other people, so that kind of thing. You know, when we first started that thing, the sports center was a different thing, but this council made a decision several years ago that we were all in at the sports center. We got to drive the membership up. At one time, the general fund was subsidizing sports center like 62, 64%. Over years, we'd gotten it down to 52, 53%. Proposed budget puts it back at 74%. Okay, we understand COVID and everything else. But 2 years ago, this council said priority is get somebody out, knocking on doors, businesses, introducing it. But also it was a starter position, a self-starter position, if you will. If Mr. Broad called and said, hey, here's a name of the business out at Brookfield, go visit them. They were supposed to go visit them, not get somebody to take them out there and not get somebody to, from that department to be the point person. But it was a team effort, but that person was to take charge and run with it. And council made sure it was understood a priority. We increased the head count. That position was created. Now we see it opening up. I am somewhat different in the fact that we did have a new gym in Mauldin open up. It doesn't do what our sports center does.
No, it doesn't.
Dungeon, another great outfit in the fitness, and they don't do what our sports center does. Our sports center is not a gym. Our sports center is a family fitness center. And that was the concept we sold, and it got there. But it's something you don't just ignore and expect a membership or perpetuate itself. It didn't happen. So yes, it's competitive somewhat, but it's unique. It just needs the word out. The word out to Duke Mayonnaise, the word out to Global Lending, the word out to a lot of other businesses. Yeah, you know, recently Ryan Holmes went in there and they fell in love with the place and they worked the deal. You buy a town home here, I give you a free membership to Sports Center. Ryan Holmes gave the free membership. Sports Center didn't give a free membership. Ryan Holmes is going to pay for that membership type thing. And for us to miss the opportunity, right now it's a golden opportunity, in my opinion, that people are beginning to come back out. If you're afraid of COVID, you ought to be at the Sports Center, Ray Hopkins Center, because it's two of the cleanest places in the city compared to other fitness gyms. And the way we take that approach for that, part of that's Mr. Madden's leadership. He's made sure that that safety is a part of that issue. That 6 foot distance is still there type thing. We got a chance to get it back, but the marketing person should have been on stream right now out there knocking on the door, not having to pull people from other departments to belay the road. And, you know, if you look down there now, we had 2 fitness people. We have 1 who's now called the manager or director or whatever they call it, kind of thing. That's not our peruse. But that's it. And then you want that person also to do recruiting. I don't see how it can happen. So to me, the priority ought to be, I don't care what you call it, but to get that head count filled. We created a head count. We made it a priority. And as far as I know, this council didn't say, hey, just delay hiring and filling that position for 6 or 8 months. And that ain't right, in my opinion. One man's opinion. Got a standpoint. So to me, build it back up. If we never get to 50-50 on the thing, I think we kind of agreed that was our goal. General fund can subsidize it 50%. It's a great marketing tool. We hear that all the time from the van as far as people visit there. Taft's the same thing. It is unique. There's not another city that has a sports center. And we made that decision a couple of years ago to go all in. And if we're not going all in, then we have to have that discussion again. Maybe we shouldn't be running a sports center.
Is there a reason why it's not advertised on our website?
No, that's just communication there. I'll talk about it.
I mean, because kids are getting ready to graduate from college, and I mean, I'm sorry, you don't have to have a gym background to be able to do that job. I mean, if you're a marketing person, you can market and sell anything. I don't care what it is, I think. So
Just want to add one thing. So the budget is a projection. The split that you see in the budget is taking into consideration the revenues that were received last year. There were a lot of members current members who, when COVID started, said they're not coming back until COVID is over, until they feel comfortable coming. So that was taken into consideration if that trend continues. We don't think it will, but it's a projection. That's not to say that the general fund will fund 75 or 70% of the budget. It's a projection. What we didn't want to run into is the issue of not having enough money budgeted in there, and let's say the trend continues and folks aren't. I mean, one of the highest industries right now is Peloton, because folks are working out at home now. That skyrocketed during the pandemic. So as folks stop working out at home and start filling back in those gyms, our expectation is our numbers will continue. We're adding more now over the past 3 months than we've added prior to, and we want to continue that. We're going to hire somebody for that position. Even once you hire that person, you want them to stay here or stay in a position long term. But it became vacant, and we're going to hire somebody to fill that position. It's clear. I've talked to Bart. He has a directive. One of his top priorities, increasing the head count at the sports center. And I'm confident that Bart will be able to do that. He'll hire the position for that, recruit and hire somebody for that to get those numbers up. We have the goal, just as council has given to me, and as you articulated, Mayor, to the department heads that are here, the priority that council has with the sports center. So that's not falling on deaf ears. Bart to be held accountable. I know you all will hold me accountable for making sure the sports center increases its membership. So that's clear.
Go ahead, Ms. King.
Thank you. Real quick, Ms. Wright, thank you. That's an excellent point, because I had forgotten until you said that, folks that had memberships during the pandemic, the city stopped drafting those accounts. So we didn't have those, correct me if I'm wrong, those memberships were not coming in. So until those folks start coming back, we're not getting those revenues. So that's what was taken into account when the budget was laid out. So I think that kind of absorbs some of, I'm not trying to put lipstick on a pig here or whatever that appropriate term is, but that high percentage, I think, is due to that and may not actually be 70 something. So maybe we can get back to.
Well, I think the big question though, from this standpoint is, from a budgeting standpoint, are we giving staff the tools needed to accomplish our goals? So if we're looking at our budget and say, are we giving them the position, the money, all those things? If we're not doing that, then that's on us. So I think that's a real question now. Does this budget does it give them the ability to meet the goals that we're giving them? And that's what we have to answer here.
Well, the position's already out there. So the answer to that, yeah, would be yes. I mean, we've been preaching it for years now.
I guess more from a business background, especially a sales background, if I give you a quota of $50,000, I expect you to hit $50,000. But if I give you a quota of $20,000, you're going to hit $20,000. So to me, a quota or budget, a fund number is a challenge, and I want you challenged. And that's different from business than maybe it is in a government-run business, but that's just, I just don't want to say 2 is all I really need to make next year. No. You need to make 380 something. That's just the way I look at it.
Good deal. Okay. Any other questions on Sports Center? All right, plowing ahead. Ray Hopkins Senior Center. Tailback, this is your baby. Any questions, comments?
No, I think Barton never done a real job. If you hadn't been up there to see the new paving,
Looks good.
Great.
it looks
Looks
great.
good.
And it's as safe as paving can be.
And Bart's in the process of working with the contractors and all to get the walking trail paved with some hard money. And we don't have all the hard money we need to do it, but we got some programs up there for some neat seniors, I think. What, bocce ball and some other things that's been proposed, and it's not a big ticket item that we're looking at putting in place for the seniors so they can enjoy the facilities even more. So, I think they've done a great job up there, and the membership is just running over up there. Appreciate everything that him and the staff do up there, and all the seniors.
Next one I have is community development.
Oh, Lord, that
Who's
department.
that?
I'm ready for PB and J. Connor, that's the 29th. That would be the pizza, jazz, and
It's the
blues.
30th.
Thank you. I'm trying to get my
2
PB
days.
and J in the right order.
It's 2 days.
I thought it was the 30th and the 1st.
Maybe say the 29th is a Thursday, so it would be the
30th and the
30th.
1st,
Yeah, the
right.
30th, Friday and Saturday,
Okay.
which the first annual was last year and it obviously had to be
We
canceled.
got
And
everything
Connor,
lined up
that's,
for
it's
Peach and Friday.
pizza, blues, and jazz. Okay, not peanut butter and
Send me
jelly.
the lineup. I had it. and I
Pizza,
deleted
beer,
it
and
the
jazz.
last
So,
Thursday.
Yeah.
I would have been really
Yeah.
disappointed when I got
And
there.
for some of us,
Right.
it is.
I just
pizza and
expect the
beer.
Post and Courier to get it correct, not the other one.
Bob will be there. Kathy, I heard they had a disagreement or something.
Craig doing the.
Okay, so that is the last one that I had in mind. It skips on to capital improvement. We're not gonna go over that because it was well vetted. I have nothing else. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add as of now? Any questions? I guess I just want to give department heads, if you had anything that you'd like to address council with now would be appropriate. More than welcome to. Any specifics, any questions, comments, concerns? Y'all are glad to be here on a Friday afternoon rather than Thursday night. I thought we'd get a round of applause for that. No, it's a good budget. It's, we kind of get the easy part of this where we get to do the critiquing and that's due to having excellent staff in place. I think as I think about this moving forward, I don't disagree at all with staff. I think it's a tight budget. As we grow as a city, as the services and the demand on services change and grow, I have a concern about the sustainability where we're at with revenues. And I do think that we have to constantly be looking at how to generate revenues to continue to provide the services that we have, because we do have great services. So all that said, I don't have anything else to add.
Mr. Reynolds, I'd just like to ask all the department heads while they're here, if there's anything since y'all discussed your budgets with Mr. Madden before council got involved, is there anything that y'all can see that has transpired from that time to this that you would need in your department for your employees' safety or for benefit of the service to the citizens of this town that we maybe need to address that has not been addressed during this budget process? Because I think council has always stressed anything to do with safety and service, especially safety, comes first, then service. So we want to make sure that everybody is well equipped with everything that they need to provide the safety for their employees and the service to their citizens. So if anybody's got anything that they've come up with, council would love to hear it so we can possibly address it, and if it needs funding, try to find some funding for it. Speak now, if ever hold your peace.
Or at least 364
I'll
more
do
days.
it.
Well, no, Matthew and Chiefs, y'all can't talk. I'm teasing.
We've been looking at all the parks, and I know I have money in there for trash cans, but I kind of was looking at the picnic tables at City Park yesterday. And I was gonna try to pitch, if there's any money left over when I buy all the trash cans, maybe I could swap out those 6, 7 picnic tables with like nice black metal ones.
Discuss that with your boss
Gotcha.
and let that boss bring it to the meeting. I don't think there'd be any problem. It has provided a service to the citizens and a safety factor as well.
Especially when you have those pretty playgrounds and those pretty trash cans and that pretty asphalt, you know?
If you want to give a, Mr. Madden, and then put it on the recreation. Have to
Can't
call
look at
back
inner
and
drug.
all that.
They gotta get more. Gateway drug.
Well, and I'll take one moment to commend council because the numbers can be staggering, they can be scary, and they can be really big. But much of what we're doing is exactly what Mr. Braun talked a lot about, and that's investing in the city. And not just maintaining, but investing to grow it and make it a great place to be. That's not always easy to do when you have to answer to people who on next door, right?
But if you don't.
I don't,
invest-
stop going on there, as Tap will say. I don't go on there, so don't bother
If you don't
me.
invest in it, you'll never make it better.
I
Ever.
agree. We're either growing or dying. Mr. Madden.
Yeah, two things I just want to give council. There was an additional grant that was added to your grant sheet that staff will be applying for fiscal year 2022. There's no cost associated with it to council. So I want to give you an update on the grant sheet, sorry.
Take one and pass it.
And then when you approve your ordinance for the budget, it's gonna reference fees that you'll be approving for this upcoming year. So this is the fee schedule. So you'll know what those fees are. But that was it. One more thing.
Mr. Madden.
Yeah, so when you approve your ordinance, there will be an ordinance for Indigo Point. You approved it last year where you set a fee. There are new homes that are being built that were not included in the ordinance that you approved last year. So that ordinance would be a part of your ordinance approval for this year. Adding
So
the
you're
new
adding,
homes,
all it's doing is adding the new homes.
adding the new homes that'll be on the tax bill for the maintenance and fee for that pump station.
So the previous ordinance did not state that as they came online, that they'd be required at that time?
No, you have to do it by when the plats are recorded at that time. So as there are new plats that have been added. So all those that we have up until when council approves it will be added, which is pretty much almost all of them, but not all. So next year you have to do the same thing.
But the developer was not having to pay per plat
No,
until
so
they sold the property?
that's correct. So the developer wouldn't have to pay the property tax on each individual home. The way for Indigo Point, the developer developed the parcels and sold the plots to the home builder. So the home builder would be responsible for them. Ultimately, the homeowner, whoever bought the house, would have to pay the tax. And so that's why it's being done this way.
I think that was a little bit different than the way we did the one down. 40-something houses out there on Bethel.
Yeah, we did all those at one time, but,
Yeah.
and the developer had to pay this. Maybe learn the lesson there and see, has to do it different as you go.
Well, there's
Plus, that's gonna be a lot more. homes.
several hundred out there versus about 45 too.
It's 300 homes there.
So Mr. Madden, going back to the fee schedule that you just passed out, this will be within our ordinance, and this is a break from what we've done in the past, right?
Yeah, I think it just referenced fees in your ordinance. The individual fees will not be listed out in your ordinance, but if you had any
Okay.
changes to those or that you wanted to change, staff didn't see it, or didn't have recommendation for any changes to the fees. But
Moving forward, though, as fees were adjusted, it would be done.
every year you will have any changes to the fees, so you'll be aware of it.
Does that make sense? Everybody?
Because if you change a fee, it's gonna impact your budget. So doing it now as opposed to trying to change it throughout the year,
Exactly.
it just makes it easier for people to keep up with.
And to be clear, there are no news. These are all current fee. This is our current fee schedule across every department.
On the fee schedule, page 4, I noticed there's a difference between resident, non-resident, except for one, the fall schedule. Was that a typo or is that correct?
For recreation,
Yeah, baseball, softball, fall, resident, non-resident, same amount. Everybody else is $20. Well, cheerleading's not 20, it's 10. There's a difference between resident and non-resident. Should be
Except for which one?
baseball, softball fall, the second one.
Oh, gotcha.
Is that just a typo or should that,
It's a difference, yes.
there is a difference between resident, non-resident?
Yeah.
So this
In
must-
all sports.
What's that word? A transcriptor error? Scripters error.
Golf. They just use our website. It's called Grow Golf now.
I'll say, you got golf, $90 a player. I didn't know we had golf in the recreation.
It's
program.
Not only that, I think it's $120. I think it's more than
Yeah,
90.
it's not coming through the city. That's just a program.
You talking about this one? Oh, okay, I was down here. Gotcha.
That's all.
Sorry.
Grow Golf now.
That's right.
I might give, every Sunday I'm out with my youngest, but it's different golf courses.
I wasn't gonna look at it because we made the point, it's gonna be part of the budget process.
It's
That's when I
county.
stepped over there.
All
Yeah, it
group
popped
golf.
out.
That's near and dear.
I didn't think we had it as a sponsored recreation program.
Ditto.
But it is $120. It's not 90. Pretty good, okay? Not a big deal.
All right, Dale, it's about that time.
Yep.
All right, guys.
Crack the box.
That is,
We get earlier and earlier.
that's all I have for
We're
this
gonna be
budget
at-
workshop.
Yesterday was the
You wanna take
15th.
the best one, come on, about it.
I appreciate everybody's,
I'd have to go to Jay Peters
That's
now.
where we're heading.
I appreciate everybody's
That's my argument.
involvement and thank you. And we look forward to getting it adopted and moving forward to another great year. Thank you, department heads. Thank you, Mr. Madden. Thank you, council. I don't think I need a second. We'll just adjourn it.
Tough year.
Thank you, Holly.